Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us today. We have Highland Machine Works with us today to talk to us a little bit about what it's like to work in a machine shop. And then we also have two guests that are apprentices within their machine shop that we get to meet and hear a little bit more about their story. I'd like to take this moment to introduce Chris Flores, our engagement manager. He is over the advanced manufacturing apprenticeships throughout the state of Arkansas, and Lonnie Emerd, who is our apprenticeship director with Apprentice. I'd also like to just go ahead and turn it over to Lonnie, and um, he'll talk to you a little bit about Highland. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jenny. And for all of you out there, Apprenticely, we've been at this for about 5 years now, and we've made a significant impact in the state of Arkansas and beyond, using the Registered Apprenticeship Program as a bridge for so many folks to be able to, one, enter into a particular profession like a machinist today, or for those who have been on board with companies and able to advance their career using the Registered Apprenticeship Program. And I do want to say welcome again, as Jenny said, to Chris Flores. He has just joined us. He's been with us for about a week now, but he's getting his sea legs and really getting after it as our employer engagement manager throughout the state of Arkansas. And I clearly want to make sure that everybody knows that we're launching what's about to happen here during National Apprenticeship Week. This is a big deal in the country, and certainly it's a big deal here in the state of Arkansas. And we just felt like what you're about to see with this company spotlight and with the day in the life of these two young apprentices, that this is a piece of the information that we want to share with the world about what we're doing in Arkansas and really what's happening with registered apprenticeship. Right now, I do have the pleasure, though, of introducing Jason Duke. Jason is the CFO and Business Development Manager at Highland Machine Works, and we've had a great chance to get to know one another. And Jason, as we kind of kick off this company spotlight, I mean, I really think that people out there are going to want to hear a little bit about the Highland Machine Works story, a little bit about you, kind of where things have evolved and how you're growing today. And then eventually we're going to talk about how this apprenticeship model has been a perfect fit for you to be able to build skills in the company. So Jason, tell us a little bit about HMW.
Thanks, Lonnie. It's good to be here today, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to share how we got to where we are today. And I hope that the people that are watching this take away some of the benefits of developing your own apprenticeship program. So Highland Machine Works was founded in December of 1983. That was a particularly cold winter. I remember it well. Nevertheless, my father founded the business then, and it was in a 1,200 square foot building in not too far down the road from where we are today in the Highland Industrial Park. Hence, that's where the name comes from. That first building had 1,200 square feet, 3 mills, 2 lathes, a bandsaw, and one welder, and my dad. That was it. Over the last 40 years, it's grown, and I think now we occupy somewhere around 20,000 square feet of space. We have several different CNC machines, mills, and lathes, varying sizes. We have several different manual mills and lathes. All of them are either 3 or 4 axis. We have 2 water jets, a laser welding center, a full fabrication facility with sheet metal capabilities with shears and brakes and rolls as well. And then we have a control section to be able to build like PLC type controls for some of the products that we produce. We provide solutions for a lot of different industries. We do a lot of work with the defense industry, but originally our biggest customer was the diaper industry. Johnson & Johnson had a factory here in the Highland Industrial Park that was called Chicopee. And over time that went away, but organically the defense business grew. In addition, Camden was founded or not founded, but grew up around IP paper mill. So we did a lot of work for them over the years. We do work for the city. The timber industry is pretty big in the area, and we work with a lot of loggers and a lot of sawmills doing a lot of different types of things. So the breadth of work that we see is pretty diverse when many machine shops are targeted towards specific production type jobs. We are problem solvers. People come to us and they bring the things that they've got something broke or they don't know how to meet a need, and we may or may not have the solution, but if we don't, oftentimes we know where to find it or know who to call and can work collaboratively with our customers to create those solutions.
Jason, what that leads to is, I think, again, another concept that people love hearing about it. And, you're combining problem solving and innovation with the fact that there are technical skills required to do what you do, right? And so the fact that you've had people on board with years of experience, and now we're going to eventually, talk to these new apprentices about what their role is and how they're learning a skill and how to be a machinist. But why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of what that technical acumen, combined with innovation really kind of looks like. I know you mentioned your customer base being pretty broad based, but just tell us a little more about how you needed to have more skills, that you needed to grow your organization to take on more work. So
I'm trying to pick which topic or which example to use. Um, we do a lot of work with the defense companies. One of the defense companies in particular actually started in our back building. The founder of Spectre Technologies is a good friend of the company. We had worked with him when he was with a different company, and in that different company, we had helped them develop some different equipment for assembling different products, in particular some rockets for the military. But those relationships that we built were based off of engineering principles and practices that my father had gained when he worked in the music industry. He worked for Ovation Guitar and for Courier Piano and for Baldwin Piano. And so he had all these experiences and technical knowledge that he had gained working with these different industries in these different parts of the country. And he was applying them to how do you make a rocket or a warhead now. Well, that same mentality applies to the person that now does our controls. We have a fellow over there. His name is Willie. Willie actually graduated an earlier iteration of apprenticeship programs in the state, which was called the Metalworking Connection. He's actually a journeyman machinist out of the Metalworking Connection, and he was a lathe machinist. But he evolved into, and his skill set is doing controls with PLCs. So we have somebody that went from being a lathe guy that didn't have any skills, went to an apprenticeship program years ago, then found out he was really good with electronics. Now he builds controls that do automation for an entire assembly line related to producing weapons for the government. We also have one of our owners, David, who started off as a plumber's assistant when he was 18 years old and has worked here for 38, maybe going on 39 years. And now he runs the day-to-day operations and is a master welder. His skill set that he brings to the table is different. And I can go on through every other employee that's out there. I will say it's reinforced with we have been here for 40 years. I think we're at 4 or 5 people that are over 30 years tenure that our 2 apprentices get to draw on. You add to that through this program, we also have Gordon, who is part of the RTI training part component, and he is a equivalent master machinist. I don't know that he went through a program per se, but he is got decades of years in machining as well. And we're taking all these skills from all these different industries, from all these different products, and we apply them in one place. And I have to give my dad the credit for this. He built a facility that has the tools to do that, to where we can leverage that knowledge when it's put in front of us.
yeah.
Now I'll take it one step further and say, and I think we're going to get to this in a minute, but we have to grow that knowledge, and that's where the apprenticeship program comes in. And I'll let you continue the conversation, but I think it's natural to see how we take this legacy information, and we needed to create a place to pass it on.
Yeah. Jason, you really did a great job of setting me up there for that introduction. And that is, for our audience to recognize the 2 really key elements that make an apprenticeship work is the fact that you're really applying some classroom learning, right? Some skill building, and it's coupled with that contextual opportunity for a mentor or your experienced folks to be able to add domain knowledge, years of intellectual capital, if you will, and that ability to put those 2 things together means that our 2 apprentices we're going to hear from in a little bit, James and Tim, are really the recipients of that benefit, right? On one hand, you don't want that knowledge capital to walk out the door without imparting that to somebody new, right? So you're building your future with these guys. Now, the apprenticeship program, we've tried to take a lot of the I'll call it the administrative side off of your plate, right? As Apprenticely, nonprofit organization, kind of your intermediary sponsor, to allow you to focus on the right things. How has that relationship between us worked for your benefit?
I'm going to tell you, we couldn't have done it without it. Um, from understanding the rules in the beginning, there's a component of this that is administrative, and that administrative burden, for lack, I mean, if I just put it in pure financial sense, that is an overhead cost that a small company, we're a small company, family owned company of 17 people right now. And it would take a full-time person to keep these records updated. That full-time person, when you figure in benefits and you figure everything else, would probably end up being somewhere between 60 and $80,000 a year. And so, and I'm just doing rough numbers here, but from my perspective, my cost, it would be significant. And I have other things that I have to do. The apprentices have other things they need to learn. And and so it fills a role that I would have had to fill. And it also fills a role with somebody that knows what they're doing, that has the relationships. I'll use the same panel you were addressing earlier this past week in Hope. Um, and forgive me, I don't remember his name, but the Arkansas representative for the Department of Labor was there. You have that relationship, and being able to connect and communicate with the DOL what uh, training RTI that these guys have taken, which is a requirement in order for them to get the certificate that they will have earned at the end of our program. Our program is 3 years long and requires 144 hours a year minimum of RTI and 2,000 hours a year OJT. All of that has to be transmitted and put in records and documented, and all that paperwork is something that I would have to have done. I would have had to have learned, and I don't have to do that now. And in addition, and ancillary to all of that, frankly, to me, almost more important is I get to interact with you, Lonnie, you, Jenny, you, Chris, and other people that I can learn from. And Mark McManus at the state, Stephanie at the Office of Skills Development, all these different people help me to figure out ways that I can improve our business and make our business stronger. So the relationships that I get out of it, plus the support, administrative support, are immeasurable.
Yeah. Well, that you just said it. I mean, the goal that we've had in establishing ourselves as a nonprofit organization that charges nothing for our services is not that it's some kind of hard to believe setup. We really are established to incentivize companies to do the right thing and eliminate the obstacles that can be barriers for you to do that. I think the last question I have for you on a company spotlight, and then we'll get to our day in the life with our apprentices, is when it comes to identifying what kind of basic attributes you were looking for in individuals that could become a machinist apprentice, just from the company perspective, what makes for a successful person from your perspective? We're going to hear from those guys as to what they've learned and how that's applying in their stories, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Okay, well, I appreciate the question. So there's a couple of different ways to approach this, and I'm going to answer it from the standpoint of Highland Machine Works. I will preface this with that if you are in a different industry, the first question you need to ask yourself is, what is the core need that you have? What are the things that you have? And I think what I'm going to say, the first thing is common across all industries, and that is attitude. It is the desire to learn, it's the desire to show up, it's the desire to want to make something better, and that to recognize that we all learn something every day. And if we can continue to learn something every day, then we grow as humans. So if you get somebody that's got that little spark, you can usually turn it into something else. Now, I will dovetail that with Highland Machine Works is a manufacturing machine shop. So we care about math. We care about somebody that can use a calculator, can do basic arithmetic. It's great if they understand a little bit of geometry and can calculate points and things like that. But being able to read a ruler, using a tape measure, these sound like simple things, but not everybody, I have family that are artists. They may not care about a ruler as much as they do a pencil, right? And so, and it's a simple metaphor, but the reality is true is that we're looking for somebody that wants to think about a problem mechanically, or wants to think about a problem where they can figure out how to use the tools in front of them to make something. And it's kind of ironic. I wasn't thinking this when I said it, but I referenced a family member that's an artist. Machinists are artists, and you have to have somebody that has that creative mentality and wants to be able to look at a problem, say, okay, if I'm going to make this, if I'm going to draw this picture with my machine, how do I do it? And I'll end my statement with this. I think it was Michelangelo that said, I don't create the David. The David is already in the stone. I just removed the stone that was hiding it. That's exactly what a machinist does.
Yeah.
The part is already in the block. They just remove the chip, get the chips out of the way so you can see it. And having somebody that has the ability and the desire to learn that is what we're looking for.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to use a different artist and tell you that I was part of a book that was written called Picasso on a Schedule. And you can imagine that that's the art and the science, right, of both IT and machining and manufacturing, right? Because it's a combination of both. And
Right.
we'll have to talk about that someday on
Absolutely.
another time. But I'm going to use this now as a transition. I'd like to be able to introduce the two apprentices that have started this program. And you know, guys, I got with me today James Mack and Tim Osteen. And James, I'm going to refer to you as Mac from this point forward, if that's okay with you, since I hear that's what they call you around the shop. You know, you've been there a little longer, right? You have an interesting story about how you came to Highland Machine Works and when you came and that kind of thing. Tell us a little bit about, you know, kind of what you were doing before you started this apprenticeship and kind of how you think some of that led to this being a great opportunity for you.
Well, I started off, I was in high school still. I joined when I was a junior in high school. I was mowing yards as a summer job just to make some money. And I was going into the summer before my senior year, and I was a little late on the ball. I didn't have all my clients there. I said, what am I going to do for money this year? Well, looking around, my dad was a welder at a machine shop across town. And we were real tight with the owners, and I was able to get in and just kind of hang around in the lathe department. Just kind of wasn't doing any kind of work. There was no hands on. I was able just to watch and see what these guys were doing. So, well, that might be a route I want to go down, but I really wasn't interested in the stuff they were doing. They did a lot of logger work, and it was some industries I wasn't, a lot of dirty work, a lot of nasty, dirty work. And I didn't even know this place was a machine shop. I had a family member that mentioned, said, hey, there's a machine shop down the road that they do all the work for Aerojet and they get a majority of the work around here. So, okay, I'll go interview. I mean, what worst I can say is no. Walk in and I met David and I met Jason, and they pulled out a tape measure, said, hey, just tell me what this table measures. It was by the grace of God that I did that because I didn't know how to read a tape measure at the time. But I was hired on. They called me that next Wednesday and said, can you start Monday? I said, oh yeah, I can be there. And I started the first, I'd say 2 or 3 months, I was sweeping floors, deburring parts, sanding. I mean, nothing high risk, run the saw a little bit, but nothing too crazy. And then they start kind of feeding you, okay, well, you can drill and tap some holes here. Okay, well, we got this simple lathe part we need you to run here. 1 or 2 of them, all manual machines. I'm not programming yet. I'm not even thinking of a program yet. And I get in, I'm 6 months in maybe, and they're, okay, well, this part's a little bit harder. You're gonna work with Daniel, or you're gonna work with Barry, and we're gonna start introducing you to programming. Start kind of easing in. Now at this point, I'm 18. I worked that whole summer, went back to school, and then I went to school till Thanksgiving. So I was playing football, so there was no way I could have made it down here and worked any kind of hours. And then I started work the Monday after I graduated, started full time. And I had kind of started programming a little bit. I had basic understanding, but nothing substantial. And then it just kind of works in that manner. The parts just get a little bit harder and a little bit harder, and you got to do a little bit more, and then so long as you retain what you're learning, if you can just kind of build on top of what you're getting, then it just gets easier, and you get faster and faster and faster. Because that's kind of the point is you need to get faster, get more efficient. You're not spending what you were going to spend several hours on 2 or 3 months ago may take you 45 minutes today. I mean, it just works kind of in that manner. And now, so we started the apprenticeship program. I was about a year and a half ish, if you count my part-time work, and then we started this, and I was able to just deepened my understanding because we could go into the classroom work. And then obviously Gordon came, and I can learn from a guy who's a master in his own right, who's showing me things I wouldn't even thought of to look at or to look for. And yeah, that's basically it.
Well, you really lead to a part of any story about apprenticeship, and that is that, you know, how somebody's path begins, right? The fact that you had, in some ways, what I would call pre-apprenticeship training, right? You had the luxury of a little bit of a part-time. Sometimes it comes in the form of a formal internship. You know, it can come in many forms, but that exposure that was really about discovery for you is really impactful, I think, to others to hear this when they say, hey, I think I'd like to do that, but I've really not had much experience. How do I get the thing started? And so that's been very helpful. Tim, for you, you've been there about a year, right? I mean, somewhere in that neighborhood. You know, tell us about how you kind of got this opportunity.
Well, yeah, I've been here for a little over a year now, and I had sort of a kind of circuitous route to get into machining and manufacturing. I had done some work years ago at a machine shop for a family friend, just kind of running a machine, and it was making the same parts, and you know, just kind of really basic kind of operation. And that was while I was going to school. And then I went off for about the past 14 years or so. I've worked in the film and entertainment industry, and I was pursuing a career as I did a lot of work as a carpenter, as a model maker, special effects, and it took me all over the place making things, often very quickly and just however I could to get the job done. And it was what I've come to learn now. A We dealt mainly in non-durable goods compared to the work that I'm doing now, and that career sort of sunsetted last year, and I was looking for a change, and so I moved back here to Camden, where I grew up. Got in touch with that friend of mine that had me work in his machine shop, and he recommended I come here because he's friends with these guys, and so I showed up and said, yeah, I'm not really sure about working on running machines and mills and lathes and things, but I said I love to make things, and I've been doing it for as long as I can, and I enjoy math and just problem solving. So they gave me a chance, and we started this apprenticeship program, and it's been a learning experience every day so far.
Yeah, both of you are such great examples. And one of the things Jason alluded to, that, you know, the program called Apprenticeship does one thing really well. Everybody knows that there's some training and skill building, and there's certain things that you have to be able to do, right, to perform a job. But to formalize that into training that has context, right, that isn't just theory. You're not just out there trying to pass a test, right? You're actually learning because you got something you got to do, right? Something you got to make. So I know you've been going through the WorkForge training, and then you've had somebody mention, you know, Gordon as one of our available facilitators that come in to enhance that training. Why don't we start with you, Tim, and then we'll go to James. But tell me a little bit about how you've been able to kind of have that become second nature to you, that you know how to go learn from those modules, with the idea that you're not just learning to say you did it, but learning so that you can then apply it there at Highland Machine Works.
Right. I view WorkForge as a really essential part of this whole program, because we are apprentices in this program, but we also are employees of a very busy business, and there's as helpful and giving as all of the employees here are with their knowledge and time. There's only so much time in the day, and they've got a lot of things to do, and so we really rely on assets like Gordon and this WorkForge system to be a way to kind of go over some of the more nuanced and detailed aspects of things that we're learning on the shop floor. For instance, you could be working on a part or using a machine and have to use certain bits or inserts or tooling or whatever, and you can come and take a Workforge module for an hour or so that goes over every detail you'd ever want to know about the way those tools work and the history of them. And it's really been interesting to dive into that and unpack just what all is in there. And it's a lot deeper than I originally thought it would be. It's really specific stuff. So I've been impressed.
Well, you kind of gave me another on-ramp to talk about this. We call this day in the life, which for somebody who's listening and watching and hearing this, and say, gosh, this sounds interesting to me. This concept of day in the life, you kind of alluded to the fact you run into something, you go back as a reference, and you're able to figure out everything that potentially you could do. So Mac, in your situation, give us an example, of something like that, a day in your life where you've had a task, you got something you're working on, and you've been able to go back to Workforge or, be able to work with your mentors and so forth to go ahead and not only solve it, but produce something. I mean, you do have an example like that?
Well, a lot of times you don't catch it the first time around. We get very little repeat business. I mean, we'll get a few jobs here and there, but it's not a lot of the same. So sometimes when the same job walks right back through the door, you kind of light bulb for a second. Okay, I struggled on this last time, but I've learned use a different cutter, use a different insert, change my speeds and feeds a little bit, and the job goes a lot easier. Or you do it in a different order, and it tends to go a lot easier. Like I've learned, cold roll steel has a lot of internal stresses. I learned this been a couple months or about a month ago. I had a big part I had to make. Every side and face had to be machined. Well, this was a lesson I learned on the fly. If you take all the material off of one end and you have a stock face on the bottom, as soon as you remove that stock material, it becomes a banana. You have spent 4 or 5 hours making a boomerang that is useless. So I learned that on the next go around, you kind of have to touch here, flip, touch here, and you got to bounce it around and just kind of ease it into size instead of wanting to take it all in one shot, which is specific to pretty much just cold roll steel, because you can do what I mentioned on aluminum and it'll is no problem. Everything will be pretty much perfect. But it's little things like that where you maybe learn from mistakes, or something just really beats you over the head that whole day, and then it comes back in. Oh yes, this is a walk in the park. It's a piece of cake.
Well, something I'll let you both kind of respond to this, and a little bit of this is kudos to you, Jason, and the company. And we face this. We're working with over 170 different companies on apprenticeship in the state across multiple sectors. But knowing that you've got production activity, right? You're not standing around waiting for the next thing. I mean, you've got business to take care of, and that's as a company. So finding the necessary balance and the approach to getting the RTI, the training in, as well as then being able to accomplish your work objectives. So, Tim, we'll start with you. Do you find that you're getting that proper balance, that opportunity that they want you to get that training in? They know how important that is, and yet you're in the midst of production activity. So how does that balance look there at Highland Machine Works for you in your workday?
I think it looks very healthy, because I think that we all have the understanding that even the folks that have been here for 30 plus years that aren't apprentices, they will tell you that every day that they're learning here, and what's the point otherwise? And so everyone here views every opportunity as a learning opportunity, and so there's really it doesn't feel like oh, now I have to go to class and now I have to stop what I'm doing and go um, do some Workforge things or whatever. It's a pretty symbiotic relationship that works really naturally with the way that we work as a company. We're getting people coming in off the street from all sorts of different industries and backgrounds with problems that need to be solved, and so it's just natural that our training can sort of fit into that environment with the flexibility we have with things like our mentor Gordon and the Workforge environment. It's really nice to and easy to be able to break away for like an hour and go work on a module and then come back and talk about it with some of the guys, and I think it works well.
That's music to my ears, because that's what we hope would happen, for every one of 1,500 apprentices, and you guys are doing it right. So, Mac, in your situation, anything else you want to add to that that's a little maybe unique to what you've been doing or what you see in terms of your day to day?
Well, kind of what Tim said, we are ridiculously busy. If I'm not working on something all day, it's a slow day. So anytime there's a lull, or I mean, there's just a little break between a job, I got to say, okay, I got to go tell Dave or go tell somebody, hey, I'm going to go take a class for an hour because I just now have this little bit of time. But most of the time, we're stacked job behind a job behind a job. There's not really a you get enough time to kind of clean what you just worked on, and then you're jumping right back in, which I love. That makes the day go by quicker, and it makes everything a lot more interesting when you're pretty when you're full throttle all day every day. But sometimes it is nice to slow down, come in here, learn for hour and a half, get as many classes as we can done, and then jump right back in.
You guys have been really articulate about what a day looks like. And I think what I want to ask you now is how impactful is it to know that you're working with an end in mind? That, as Jason said earlier, at the end of your 3-year apprenticeship, you're going to get a national credential at the end of this thing, right? That's very meaningful and impactful. To each of you, why don't you tell us kind of, and I'll start with you, Mac, is that on your mind? Does that mean something to you? In other words, knowing that you're striving for something that puts you into journeyman status and shows that you've accomplished something significant.
It is and it isn't, because this is a 3-year program. I've still got 2 years before I attain that end. So if I sit here and dwell on it, I mean, it's just gonna keep my mind preoccupied. It's really day by day here. You got to kind of finish one thing, it's out of your head, on to the next, on to the next. But every once in a while, I do think about it. So, okay, well, there's an ends to this means. There's a light at the end of this tunnel. I'm gonna have something that proves that I went through a formal apprenticeship, because a lot of guys here are ridiculously skilled, but there's nothing. It's just their word and the guys that they're around that can attest to the fact that they're really good at what they do. But this will be, in a way, a proof of, hey, I've done this, done that. But I think about it every once in a while. But you got to kind of day by day.
That's a good answer. How about you, Tim?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't see it as like as an end necessarily. It's more of a milestone, and uh, or maybe a permission slip, I guess, to go off and take that whatever we've learned in that amount of time and go, hey, I've now got permission to go to the next step if I choose to, and that's having something like that, whether it's a diploma or a certificate or an apprenticeship like a journeyman card. Those are really special things to hold on to when you talk about your life in a career, and a lot of people have some of one or the other, but a journeyman card is I guess I haven't heard of a lot of people having those nowadays, in any industry, and so it's pretty interesting to be a part of a program that can trace its roots back so far in machining and in all trades, and to be the recipient of that training, combined with the fact that we're doing it in such a 21st century way, it's a pretty neat space to kind of live in and be a part of. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the rest of this program holds, and then after that, whatever's next, but I feel like I'm ready for it. So
yeah. Well, as a moderator, I'm going to thank you guys again, because I shouldn't have used the word end, because it always is just, where something has closure, it's a transition to what's next, right? The whole idea of career pathways and the Jason question that I'm going to ask him as we close this out is, succession planning is what every organization thinks about, or should, right? In terms of, he mentioned folks that are going to be retiring and who's next in line, and how do you advance people in the organization, and how do you backfill at the lower levels and continue to grow and nurture, what you're doing. You guys really said it really well, that, you can't focus on that. You're focusing on the day to day. At the same time, there is some prestige in accomplishing that at the end. And then it's what's next. You become that person that's the next mentor. You're the one that's helping bring along the next regime, so to speak, right? So, guys, I just want to say thanks for spending some time telling us about what the day in the life is. Jason, I do want to close out with, you got to be pretty proud of these guys. And if you want to kind of close out with what they shared and what your vision is for what's coming down the pike, at Highland Machine Works.
Well, thank you, Lonnie, again for giving us the time to do this. I am very proud. We're all very proud of this. And when we set out to do this, when we first started talking with Mark, and at that time David, and then you and other people, we said we want to create something that creates a quality machinist anywhere. So if somebody can model their program after the way we do ours, because you have to get your rapids codes and you have to do all the stuff within the Department of Labor. And there wasn't anything that we found that was absolutely perfect. And so then we took what we could find and we tailored it, which the apprenticeship program allows you to do. And we've made a model that I think that anybody that comes out of this would be a great machinist for Highland Machine Works. I also think they'll be a great machinist, period. And one of the things that we're proudest of is we were the first in the state of Arkansas with a machinist apprenticeship program. And we will forever be the first with this iteration of apprenticeship programs, I should say, for apprenticeship program in the state of Arkansas. And so there's a benefit to being the one that blazes the trail, and there's some negatives. The benefit is that everybody's got to follow up and compare to you. The blazing the trail part, the hard part though, is, are you doing everything that you need to be doing? And we've had two great guys that have helped us to come out of the gates ahead, and they're learning well, they're growing, we can see a marked improvement from day one in both of them. They're both learning, and one of the things that businesses have to think about when they're doing this is that I hire somebody, they go into the apprenticeship program, I have to spend a certain number of dollars training them. There's got to be a return at some point. Every business is in business to, except for your nonprofits, is in business to make a profit, right?
Yep.
And that's to pay salaries, that's to keep job security. There's a whole host of reasons behind it, business reasons. But how long does it take before somebody is returning on the time you've invested? Both of these guys are already returning. We're already seeing more than we've put in. We're getting that out, and that's what you want. I had a boss at a previous job that told me, because it was a plant in Nashville, and they said he was very matter of fact. He said, this plant is a black box. The headquarters puts money in and they expect more money to come out, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way of what we do in the middle. They don't care as long as that happens, right? Well,
Yep.
let's look at it. And I don't want to make it all about money, but my point with this is we're putting training into this. We're working with these guys. We've got Gordon. We got all these different folks, got all this different wisdom we want to pass on, and it is working. We are getting a higher skilled group of employees. So that's encouraging for us because it makes us want to continue to do it. We're already approved for another apprenticeship, apprentice, if we can find that right fit. And if we can, we will. That does create a backfill for people that can and probably will start retiring in the next 5 to 7 years. So it is part of our succession plan. It's part of keeping the doors open for another 40 years. I will be honest that we're almost through year one, and I'm very proud of what we've accomplished in year one. And at the end of year two, I'm going to say we're almost year two, and we've almost figured out the way to do the year two in our 3-year program. And at the end of year three, we will say we've almost figured out how to do the end of year three. But we won't have been able to do it without these guys, and they're helping me. And when we're done, when they graduate, there will be people behind them that will be getting the benefit of what they've learned and what I've learned and what the company's learned and what you've helped us to do.
Yeah. Well, you couldn't have said any better. And I guess as I bring closure to this, as I mentioned up front, this is being launched during National Apprenticeship Week. And we do want to celebrate that you're the first to have this machinist apprenticeship program in the state of Arkansas. It is a big accolade for you. We want to give you that visibility. And at the same time, you're doing a lot to promote why this is going to become so pervasive across the state. So I'd introduced, Chris, and so did Jenny, Chris Flores at the beginning, for him to know that we have this program, that he can take to other areas of the state with other companies that can learn from what you've established there in the machinist apprenticeship program at Highland Machine Works is extremely valuable. I see that we're closing out with this particular slide here that just can help people to know how to get in touch with Chris. Certainly, I'm always available. But I do want to close by saying thank you to you, Jason, and to you, Tim, and to you, Mac, for spending some time with us today. You really did share the kind of message that I think people need to hear, and we do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.